Hello guys, kumusta uli sa inyong lahat dyan? Dahil ngayong araw na to ay December 13, gusto ko lang sa inyong yung ipakita yung tungkol sa tradisyon nila dito sa Sweden. Ako'y yung naka-costume ng Santa Lucia. Mahabang damit ito, mahaba. Ayan. Hanggang sa baba. Ayan. Yan. Bakit nakaread ako ng yung ginagamit kong belt, parang belt na may ribbon. Yan ay ang ibig sabihin, si Santa Lucia ay namatay na martir. At saka yung red ay ang ibig sabihin yung tungkol sa dugo, yung sa blood. Yun ang ibig sabihin yan. Ito. Babasahin natin yung tungkol sa kay Santa Lucia. Ito. St.Lucy Day, also called the Feast of St.Lucy, is a Christian feast day observed on the 13th of December. The observance commemorates Lucia of Syracuse, an early 4th century virgin martyr under the Diocletianic persecution, who according to the legend brought food to aid Christians hiding in the Roman catacombs. Wearing a candle lit on her head to light her way and leave her hands free to carry as much food as possible. Her feast day, which coincided with the shortest day of the year prior to calendar reforms, is widely celebrated as Festival of Light, falling within the Advent season. St. Lucy's Day is viewed as precursor of Christmastide, pointing to the arrival of the light of Christ in the calendar on Christmas Day. St. Lucy's Day is celebrated most widely in Scandinavia and in Italy, with its emphasizing a different aspect of her story. In Scandinavia, where Lucy is called Santa Lucia in Norwegian and Danish, and Sancta Lucia, Sancta with K, in Swedish, she is represented as lady in a white dress symbolizing a baptismal robe and a red sash symbolizing the blood of her martyrdom, with crown or wreath of candles on her head. In Norway, Sweden, and Swedish-speaking regions of Finland, as songs are sung, girls dress as St. Lucy carry cookies and saffron buns in procession, which symbolizes bringing the light of Christ into the world's darkness. In both Protestant and Catholic churches, boys participate in the procession as well, playing different roles associated with Christmastide, such as Saint Stephen. The celebration of St. Lucy's Day is said to help one live the winter days with enough light. A special devotion to St. Lucy is practiced in the Italian regions of Lombardy, Emilia, Romagna, Veneto, Friuli, Venezia, Giulia, Trentino, Alto Adige, in the north of country and Sicily, in the south as well as in the Croatian coastal region of Dalmatia. In Hungary and Croatia, a popular tradition on St.Lucy's Day involves planting wheat grains that grow to be several centimeters tall by Christmas Day, representing the nativity of Jesus. An inscription in Syracuse dedicated to Euschia, meaning St. Lucy's Day, as a local feast dates back to the 4th century AD, which states Euschia, the irreproachable, live a good and pure life for about 25 years, died on St. Lucy's feast day. She whom I cannot find appropriate words of praise, she was a Christian, faithful, perfection itself, full of thankfulness and gratitude. The feast of St. Lucy became a universal feast of the church in the 6th century, commemorating the Christian martyrs' death on 13th December 304 AD. St. Lucy's Day appears in this sacramentary of Gregory, as well as that of Bede, and Christian churches were dedicated to St. Lucy in Italy as well as in England. Later, Christian missionaries arrived in Scandinavia to evangelize the local population, carrying the commemoration of St. Lucy with them, and this story of a young girl bringing light in the midst of darkness no doubt held great meaning to people who in the midst of North Sea December were longing for the relief of warmth and light. St. Lucy is one of the few saints celebrated by the overwhelmingly Lutheran Nordic people, Danish, Swedes, Finns, and Norwegians, but also in the United States and Canada and Italy. It is speculated that St. Lucy's Day celebrations in Scandinavia alone may retain a few indigenous Germanic pagan, pre-Christian, midwinter elements. Some of the practices associated with the feast of St. Lucy may predate the adoption of Christianity in that region, and like much of Scandinavian folklore and even religiosity is centered on the annual struggle between light and darkness. The Nordic observation of St. Lucy is first attested in the Middle Ages and continued after Protestant Reformation in the 1520s and 1530s. Although the modern celebration is only about 200 years old, it is likely that tradition owes its popularity in the Nordic countries to the extreme change in daylight hours between the seasons in the region. The pre-Christian holiday of Yule or Yule was the most important holiday in Scandinavia and Northern Europe. Originally, the observance of the winter solstice and the rebirth of the sun, it brought about many practices that remain in the Advent and Christmas celebration today. The Yule season was a time for feasting, drinking, gift-giving, and gatherings, but also the season of awareness and fear of the forces of the dark. In Scandinavia, as late as until the mid-18th century, this date was longest night of the year, coinciding with the winter solstice due to the Julian calendar being employed at that time. The same can be seen in the poem Noctumal upon St. Lucy's Day being the shortest day by English poet John Donne. While this does not hold for our current Gregorian calendar, This discrepancy of 8 days and 8 days would have been the case in the Julian calendar during the 14th century, resulting in winter solstice falling on December 13 with the original adoption of the Gregorian calendar in the 16th century. The discrepancy was 10 days and had increased 11 to 11 days in the 18th century when Scandinavian adopted the new calendar with winter solstice falling on 9th December. The winter solstice is not visibly shorter than the several days leading up to and following it, and although the actual Julian date of winter solstice would have been on 15 or 14 December at the time when Christianity was introduced to Scandinavia, 13 December could well have lodged in people's mind people's mind as being the shortest day. The choice of 13th December as St.Lucy's Day, however, predates the 8-day error of the 14th century Julian calendar. This date is attested in pre-Tridentic monastic calendar, probably going back to the earliest attestation of her life in the 6th and 7th centuries, and it is the date used throughout Europe. So while the world changed from a Julian to a Gregorian calendar system and hence acquired a new date for the winter solstice, St. Lucy's Day was kept at 13th December and not moved to the 21st. In the Roman Empire, 25 December in the Julian calendar date was celebrated as being the day when the sun was born, the birthday of Sol Invictus, as could be seen in the chronography of 354. This date corresponding to the date of the winter solstice. Early Christians considered this a likely date for their Savior's nativity, as it was commonly held that the world was created on spring equinox, to fall on 25 March at the time, and that Christ had been conceived on that date, being born 9 months later on winter solstice. A Swedish source states that the date of winter solstice, St.Lucy, 13th December, predates the Gregorian, which implies that Lucia's Day was 13 December in the Julian calendar. Home is equal to 21st December in the Gregorian. Now, same source states use of the name Little Yule, for the day that it was among the most important days of the year, that it marked the start of Christmas month, and that with the move to the Gregorian calendar in Sweden 1753, the date, not the celebration, completely lost its appropriateness significance. Lucy night was marked in Sweden December 13. Then Lucy, a female being with evil traits like a female demon or witch, was said to ride through the air with her followers called Lucinata. This itself might be an echo of the myth of the wild hunt called Uskeria in Scandinavia, found across northern, western, and central Europe. Between Lucy night and the cow trolls and evil spirits, in some accounts also the spirits of the dead were thought to be active outside. The Lucy night was marked in Sweden 13th December. Then Lucy, a female being with evil traits like a female demon or witch, was said to ride through the air with her followers called Luciferda. This itself might be an echo of the myth of wild hunt called Oscorea in Scandinavia, found across northern, western, and central Europe. Between Lucy Night and the cow trolls and evil spirits, in some accounts also the spirits of the dead were thought to be active outside. It was believed to be particularly dangerous to be out during Lucy Night. According to tradition, children who had done mischief has to be taken had to take special care, since Lucy could come down through the chimney and take them away, and certain tasks of work in the preparation for Yule had to be finished, or else the Lucy would come to punish the household. The tradition of Lucy Vaca, to stay away through the Lucy Night to guard oneself and the household against evil, has found a modern form through throwing parties under daybreak. Another company of spirits was said to come riding through the night around Yule itself, journeying through the air over land and water. There is little evidence that the legend itself derives from the folklore of Northern Europe, but the similarities in the names Lucy and Lucia and the date of her festival, 13 December, suggest that two separate traditions may have been brought together in the modern day celebrations in Scandinavia. St.Lucy is often depicted in art with a palm as the symbol of martyrdom. Basahin natin. According to the tradition story, Lucy was born of rich and noble parents about the year 283. Her father was Roman of origin. Her father was of Roman origin, but died when she was 5 years old, leaving Lucy and her mother without a protective guardian. Although no sources for her life story exist other than in hagiographies, St.Lucy, whose name Lucia refers to light, Lux Lucis, is known to have been a Sicilian saint who suffered a sad death in Siracusa, Sicily, around AD 310. A devout Christian who had taken a vow of virginity, her mother betrothed her to a pagan. She was seeking help for her mother's long-term illness at the shrine of Saint Agatha when the saint appeared to her in a dream besides the shrine. Saint Agatha told Lucy that the illness would be cured through faith, and Lucy was able to convince her mother to cancel the wedding and donate the dowry to the poor. Enraged, her suitor then reported her to the governor for being a Christian. According to the legend, she was threatened to be taken to a brothel if she did not renounce her Christian beliefs. But they were unable to move her, even with 1,000 men and 50 oxen pulling. Instead, they stuck materials for a fire around her and set light to it. But she would not stop speaking, insisting that her death would lessen the fear of it for other Christians and bring grief to non-believers. One of the soldiers stuck a spear through her throat to stop these denouncements, but to no effect. Another gouged out her eyes in an attempt to force her into complacency, but her eyes were miraculously restored. St.Lucy was able to die only when she was given the Christian last rites. In one story, St. Lucy was working to help Christians hiding in the catacombs during the terror under the Roman Emperor Diocletian, and in order to bring with her as many supplies as possible, she needed to have both hands free. She solved this problem by attaching candles to a wreath on her head. Italy, Catholic celebrations take place on 13 December and in May. St. Lucy or Lucia's name comes from the Latin word lux, meaning light. Linked with this element and with the days growing longer after the winter solstice. Yun na. Basa natin yung ano. In Sweden, the Swedish lyrics to the Neapolitan song Sta.Lucy have traditionally been either natin gortunga fiat the night steep sibili or Sta.Lucy Lius Clara Hegring St. Lucia bright mirage o anong pag-pronounce yan. There is also a modern version with simpler lyrics for children. They are more okal. Outside it's dark and cold. Although St.Lucy's Day is not an official holiday in Sweden, it is popular occasion in Sweden. At many universities, students hold big formal dinner parties since this is the last chance to celebrate together before most students go home to their families for Christmas. The modern tradition of having public procession in the Swedish cities started in 1927 when a newspaper in Stockholm, yung capital city nila yan, elected an official Lucy for Stockholm that year. Oo, parati yan silang may Miss Santa Lucia, yun na nagaano rin sila, yung parang contest ba. The initiative was then followed around the country through the local press. Today, most cities in Sweden appoint a Lucy every year. Schools elect a Lucy and her maids among the students, and a national Lucy is elected on national television from regional winners. The regional Lucy will visit Stockholm, will visit shopping malls, old people's homes and churches, singing and handing out ginger cookies. Guinness World Records has noted the Lucy procession in Ericsson Globe in Stockholm as the largest in the world, with 1,200 participants from Adolf Fredriks Music School, that is Stockholm High School, and to Stockholm Bluesar Symphoniker. Boys take part in the procession playing different roles associated with Christmas. Some may be dressed in the same kind of white robe, but with a cone-shaped hat decorated with golden stars called Stjärngosar, Star Boys. Some may be dressed up as Tomtenisar or Santa's elves in English, carrying lanterns, and some may be dressed up as gingerbread men. They participate in the saying and also have a song or two of their own, usually Staffan Stallidring. That is the song, which tells the story about Saint Stephen, the first Christian martyr, carrying for his 5 horses. Some trace the rebirth of the Lucy celebrations in Sweden to the tradition in German Protestant families of having girls dressed as angelic Christ children, handing out Christmas presents. The Swedish variant of this white dress kind chin, Jesus or Christ kind, was called Kinkin, yes, and started to appear in upper class families in the 18th century on the Christmas Eve with a candle wreath in her hair, handing out candy and cakes to the children. Another theory claims that the Lucy celebration evolved from old Swedish tradition of star boys and white dress angels singing Christmas carols at different events during Advent and Christmas. In either case, the current tradition of having a white dress woman with candles in her hair appearing on the morning of the Lucy Day started in the area around Binnern in the late century and spread slowly to other parts of the country during the 19th century. A special big band, Lucy Cat, ito, yung binik ko nung isang araw, made with saffron and in use as early as November is a very popular Christmas tradition. Since 2008, there has been some controversy over males as Lucy, with one male who was elected Lucy at a high school being blocked from performing and another performing together with a female. In another case, a 6-year-old boy was not allowed to appear with a Lucy crown because the school said it couldn't guarantee his safety. Yun na yung sabi ko sa inyo, yung tungkol sa tradisyon nila ng Santa Lucia tuwing December. Yung talaga rin yan, may tradisyon nila na kung sino ang sa pamilya na yun, kung sino ang pinaka matandang anak na babae sa early in the morning, mga sabihin na natin 5 o'clock, may kanta na Santa Lucia. Pagkatapos nagdadala siya ng ito yung gingerbread at saka yung saffron bun sa parents niya na nakahiga pa sa kama. Pagkatapos kape din ng kape, ipapakita ko sa inyo yung ginagamit nilang asukal, cubes, white sugar. Ito yung ginagamit nila pag umiinom sila ng kape, ganitong asukal. At saka sa mga eskwelahan, maagang maaga pa yan, mga alas 5, kagaya ng sabi ko sa inyo, alas 4, yung Santa Lucia, nandiyan yan siya, nagra-ride sa yung horse ba, nagra-ride yan sila ng horse. Pagkatapos, yung kagaya ng nasabi dito na may mga elves na costume ng elves, naka-costume din ng mga lalaki ng white, pero yung sa kanila hindi ito crown, yung parang papel na mataas yung dito. Pagkatapos mayroon din dekorasyon na ng stars o man, yun ang nila. Sayang lang na hindi ko maganda yung kanta nila, kaso lang yung hindi ko sa YouTube mapa-upload ba dito kasi baka matanggal itong ko, pero magkakanta ako ng konti. Yung boses ko hindi maganda. To all people to all the Swedish people who happen to listen to this vlog, please forgive me. I know I have a bad voice, but I cannot upload the Santa Lucia song on my blog. So I will try to sing it a little bit to my YouTube audience. Okay, magkakanta tayo. Konti yung baka yung mga subscriber ko maglayasan dito sa channel ko. Natin gortunga fiat rundgård och stova kring jord som solen forlet skogorna rova Du I vårt mörka stiger mitt enda ljus. Sankta Lucia, Sankta Lucia, du I vårt mörka stiger mitt enda ljus. Sankta Lucia, Sankta Lucia, natin var stor och storm, now hördes vingar I alla tysta rum, så som av vingar. Se på vårt trosstycke står, vit glid midjus hår. Sankta Lucia, Sankta Lucia. Tama na yan. Baka maglayasan na kayo. Okay, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat dyan. Bye-bye.